Before we dive into today's episode, we have some exciting news to share. Our spring cohort of the Next Economy MBA begins on March 28th, 2023, and we want you to join us. We designed the Next Economy MBA for entrepreneurs and change makers who are helping to create a world that works for all life. During this 9-month program, you'll learn practical skills on how to transform your organization into one that is just, equitable, and regenerative. Plus, you'll join an alumni community of over 400 impact leaders who are transforming organizations around the world. Interested in learning more? Visit lifteconomy.com/MBA to view our course curriculum and sign up for a free intro session with our facilitators. Thanks for listening, and now on to the show. Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy.
My name is Erin Axelrod, a partner worker owner at Lift Economy, and I'm so excited to welcome to the show a couple amazing social entrepreneurs, and I'll just share both of their bios at the outset. Meg Erskine is alumni of the Next Economy MBA program, and she's also the founder of the Multicultural Refugee Coalition, MRC, which she founded with 2 Liberian refugees and another American woman in 2009. Under her collaborative leadership, MRC has grown to provide livelihood opportunities for refugees through skills-based education and social entrepreneurship. The 2 thriving social enterprises, New Leaf Agriculture and Open Arms Studio, provide fair wage jobs for refugees in areas where they bring great interest and expertise, along with the opportunity to learn and advance in their careers. And Meg has a background in conservation biology, and she's passionate about sustainability, ethical fashion, regenerative agriculture, social enterprise, and making the world a more equitable and prosperous place for all. And we're so excited to also be joined by Matt Simon, who's the farm manager, I believe, for New Leaf Agriculture, and we're going to hear a lot about the farm today. Matt was born in Austin, Texas. He's been involved in local organic agriculture since 2012. And after earning his permaculture design certificate in 2015, he began working for Symbiosis Regenerative Systems and also spent 2 years as the manager of Green Gate Farms. So he's been the farm director at New Leaf Agriculture since January of 2020. And Matt and Meg, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're so thrilled to be here.
Yay. Well, we are thrilled to have you. And Meg, we'd love it if you could share a little bit about how this work first came about and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So it's been a labor of love for many, many years. I have a background in conservation biology, but started teaching English to the refugee population that was resettled to Austin in around 2007. And just hearing directly from them, I just heard over and over just how they wanted to get their hands in the dirt here in their new community and really be self-sufficient through their skills of sewing and farming. And that spoke to me deeply. And so we started connecting the dots and started community gardening and community sewing circles, and really grew that just through collaboration and partnership with the refugees that were here now in our community. So we built that through a community center, and then that grew for about 5 years until we took on Open Arms Studio, which was a social enterprise that was donated to us for textile manufacturing, employing refugee women. And that was in 2015. And that really helped us solidify our model and realize that we could help make a significant difference for folks if they had sustainable employment, especially doing something, we like to call it a livelihood, and something they bring a lot of skill and expertise and fair wages and ways that they can continue to kind of rise up in leadership and just continue to make that difference. And so that's what we've been doing since 2015. Open Arms got us started with that social enterprise model. And then we moved from community gardening to commercial farming in 2018 when we got access to land. So that's how we came to be.
Amazing. So exciting to hear about your journey. And we're going to get into some more of that. Matt, I'm curious if you could share what's most exciting right now, maybe something out at the farm or something in your work and your world that you'd like to share for our listeners.
Yeah, right now out at the farm, there's several projects that we've sort of been kicking around probably the entire, couple years that I've been working here at New Leaf that feel like this next year they're coming to fruition in really, really neat ways. So probably the one that I'm most excited about is a program that we're calling Traditional Provisions. And Meg mentioned that we've had a community garden, and we still do actually at a local high school that one of our farmers attended when he was in high school. And there's about 20 plots there that different refugee families from all over maintain. And so this year they're actually going to be moving out of there. The school needs the space for some other things, but we're planning on transferring that community garden aspect out here to the farm. And then sort of through one thing that we've always wanted to focus on out here as much as possible is food autonomy. And, we operate like a 130 person CSA program, and we also sell at a farmer's market. So, most of the produce that we grow is kind of grown for the American palate, I would say, lots of kind of standard vegetables, but that's not always necessarily what our refugee farmers would grow for themselves and their communities. And so through the Traditional Provisions program, we're going to set aside some space out here and kind of transfer that community gardening aspect out to the farm. And we've secured some funding to actually be able to pay the folks who are farming out here to grow what they want, and then we'll purchase it from them and help them to distribute it amongst their own communities. So I think for me, that's the most exciting thing, because it really allows us to move beyond just being a farm that employs refugees, kind of to sell veggies into the standard market, to kind of creating this new market and this new kind of relationship between our farmers and their own communities. And yeah, I'd say heading into this year, I'm really excited to see that whole process kind of get underway. And that's definitely one of the highlights that we have coming up this year for sure.
I love it. And it struck me when you used the term food autonomy. Would one of you want to expand upon that and just share a little bit more about why that's so important, particularly for your work and the populations you serve?
Yeah, I can sort of touch on what that phrase means to me. There's a lot of talk. I feel like the terms food justice and food access are two things that get talked about a lot. And there's such a broad range of what food justice or food access can really mean. And I think for me, especially working out here with the folks that we work with, sort of the foundation of food justice and food access is food autonomy, and really providing kind of the space for people to, determine what it is that makes sense for them to eat within their own cultures and, for their own approach to health. And I think that idea of food autonomy, it doesn't just apply to, the refugee population that we work with out here. I think when I think about food access issues and urban neighborhoods and things like that, I think, that word autonomy for me really kind of resonates and sort of informs everything else that kind of falls under the usual purview of food justice.
Yeah, it kind of brings to mind this notion of agency and this notion of really having self-determination over the types of food and the cultural significance of what you're eating. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was the first time I'd heard that term used before.
Yeah.
Meg, do you have anything to add?
Just that when just hearing from folks over these years, and especially what first got us started and what resonated with me, is that a lot of the foods they couldn't find that were familiar to them. And they may be able to find them at the different ethnic grocery stores around town, but on being on a fixed income, it was very expensive to buy those foods. And so if you had the skill and opportunity and just the green space to grow something for yourself, I think that really speaks to that level of food justice as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so you talked about that initiative. Are there other initiatives that you'd want to share with our listeners that you're working on to help create and grow the next economy?
Yeah, there's so many things we're working on that I'm just so excited about. So thanks for giving us a chance to share about them. The Traditional Provisions was one of our biggest that's coming up. We're also starting a pantry line that is included all the different recipes inspired by our team members. So we're really excited about that, to bring those foods forward and those recipes forward and make sure we don't have food waste and things like that. So we're excited about the pantry line coming. We also have our chickens, which I'm sure Matt will tell you a lot more about, but we have 200 chickens that we just added this last year that are contributing to our regenerative organic goals. And so it, of course, provides eggs, which we're excited to share, but it also is helping to make the fields available for us to be able to plant into. And Matt can tell you more for sure. And then at the open arms side, I just wanted to bring up a quick note on that. We're very excited about the development of our artisan line. And so we are amongst artisans from around the world, but our model has really been to provide steady jobs for folks. And the way that we have first done that over these last several years has been to find partners who needed things made for them and then had a steady way for us to be able to pay folks to make those items. And now that we're at a pretty steady space, we're really excited to be able to start exploring what these artisan skills are that are amongst our team. And so we have women from Afghanistan and Burma and Congo and Eritrea and all over the world. And so we're really getting into that right now. And so many are incredible weavers. So we just got a loom. We're really looking into some natural dyes. A lot of these efforts are kind of crossover from the farm as well, for the things that we grow at the farm can make their way into these products that we're looking at producing at Open Arms. So yeah, lots to come, but really with the goal of being able to really put the refugee knowledge and skill kind of face forward, as opposed to, they enjoy sewing and farming and all that, but being able to really, we learn from each other and share ideas back and forth all the time, but being able to really make that front and center is really exciting to me in this coming year. I feel like the word also that I've been thinking about a lot has been this word connection. I think we're all hungry for connection because of the pandemic, and that's certainly true amongst many of our supporters, but it's also true amongst all of our team members as well. So we're looking forward to a lot more community lunches and community exchange, whether that's through recipe exchanges or these artisan development, but even just in sharing and conversation a lot more purposefully and regularly through team lunches and such. So lots to come around that connection point for the coming year.
Absolutely. And Meg, I'd love it if you could speak to the connection between Open Arms and the farm, because I know you've taken a lot of inspiration around how to bring more natural dyes, for example, into the textile industry, and how to reduce our reliance on, toxic components of textiles. Could you speak to some of the piloting that you've worked on with regards to sourcing some of your products from the farm and so forth?
Absolutely. Well, we're just getting started, I feel like. So we have 800 Mexican marigolds that are planted, and they're part of our regenerative agriculture goals as well. So those are perennials that are planted on our berms and swale systems. They're planted all along the berms. And we are just working with a local artist just right now to help us develop that into a natural dye kit. And then we're hoping to sew some items at Open Arms, whether that's, on our own and selling those as kits, or being able to have workshops. And again, in that spirit of connection, by bringing people in and learning how to do natural dye, or learning how to sew a small tea towel or whatever it may be, but really looking forward to bringing that in this coming year. And then Matt can also tell you a little bit more about our flax project. We had a project with flax this last year that is now in its second phase. So we're excited to continue to explore that as well.
Yeah, I can jump in and talk about the flax a little bit. So we're friends with a farm. I got introduced through sort of a mutual friend who's really passionate about regenerative agriculture. We're friends with a farm in Nova Scotia. They're called Taproot Farm, and they run, a pretty large CSA and that sort of thing. And they also raise sheep for wool. But they did sort of a study that was funded by the Canadian government to look into longline flax production. So essentially using the entire flax plant to make flax thread, which can then be woven into fabric. And, there's sort of a whole process of growing the flax, and then goes through a process of what's called retting, which is essentially breaking down the sort of like harder parts of the flax. And then it has to be put through several different machine processes that kind of yield this finer thread at the end. So it's been a really interesting thing to learn about. So this past spring, we got a little bit of seed from them just to do like a very quick test to see how it liked our soil and that sort of thing. And it actually did really well. And so this year we're growing about probably like 20 times as much as we grew last year. So we have a pretty good sized field of longline flax that we're growing. And so in the spring, we'll go ahead and harvest that. And the Taproot has actually developed these small scale machines sort of designed to be used on small farms for the milling process of the fiber. And so we'll probably, once we get it through that first phase, we'll be shipping it up to them to help run it through their machines. And, someday if it is something that we decide to scale up, it's possible that we might end up with our own machines on farm as well. But I just love the way that, potentially by, 2023, we'll have sort of like some fabric that was grown on the farm that could then be dyed, with the Mexican mint marigolds that we also grow here on the farm. And I feel like that sustainable fiber production is such a cool world. And it also feels like it's very individualized right now. Like it seems like, there's this person doing this over here and this person doing this over here. And, there's a lot of communication, but as far as there being like a definite industry for it, I think it's still in its infancy. And so we're just, super excited to be kind of getting in on the ground level of kind of a revitalization of approaching flax as a plant for fiber.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Meg, I'm so curious if you could share more with our listeners about how the farm came to be and, who's a part of it. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. So having some land of our own was a long time dream of ours. I remember when we first started with community gardens, these were little 10 by 20 plots, and most refugees were like, what in the world? What can we possibly grow in a 10 by 20 plot? So having access to much larger land was always the goal. And being able to make a living off that land was really important to us. And we were working with the city of Austin to try to look for properties that were within the city limits, because most refugees, when they're resettled, are within the city limits and on the bus line. And so that was pretty important to us. But we had a good 2-year search, and it was really difficult to find access to land, anything that was affordable or allowed us to, we could do a lot of community gardening, but in order for us to actually make a living off that land was much more difficult. So Wandaka Musangera, who is one of our dear farmers that we met while he was an FFA student at a local high school, and really helped us get our whole program started, our whole gardening program and such. And so he was out. We used to take refugees out to much larger farms. We called it Farm Link. And that's actually where we met Matt. We took our team members out to Greengate farms and other farms kind of around the city so they could get access to much larger land and sort of seeing what that was about. And it's just so peaceful and so good for folks to get off the, everything that they knew right there in the city. So we did that on a lot of different farms. And so one of them, I was not there that time. Wandaka went with several other refugee team members and went out to this larger farm, and they were harvesting sweet potatoes. It's probably about maybe 25 minutes outside the city. And on this farm, he met the landowner, who's our landowner now, John Beal, who's a longtime conservationist. And Wandaka said, well, what are you doing on all this land? We're looking for some land. And he's so bold and always asks for what he needs and wants. He's very inspiring. And so sure enough, I got a phone call later on that day that said, hey, I got access to land. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. What's the story? I need to know more about this. And so soon met the landowner, and he was serious. He gave us some land to work with. And it's really special and really speaks to my long-term conservationist heart. This man, John Beal, is a longtime conservationist in the Austin area, been involved with a variety of different conservation and land efforts. So his land sits on 300 acres, but has 5 other landowners that are connected up to him to make 1,200 contiguous acres that's in a land trust, so that it's preserved to perpetuity. So that's where we're growing, and our goals for sustainable farming really match his goals for his land long term. So we really feel like we're in a really special space. And not only that, the farm where we're at is in a little town called Littig, between the cities of Manor and Elgin. And it's one of the oldest freedmen colonies in the Austin area. And so John Beal bought his land from Thomas Fowler, who was one of the first Black postmasters in Texas. And so that land was passed down in his family. And so just the roots on the land are really special to us. And the idea that now we're giving refugees a chance to develop new roots in the same spot is really extra special. A little bit about the farm itself. And so many of our team members just bring this background of farming. We learn so much from one another about their farming traditions. And Matt is teaching them about growing in Central Texas, which may be a little bit different from where they've come from. Matt gets to work with these folks every single day. So I know he's probably got a few stories he can share.
Yeah. So like Meg mentioned, we're, sort of working. It's such an interesting crossroads between all the experience and kind of methods and knowledge that our farmers bring to the table. And then also, sort of we have the opportunity to teach them about sort of some of the production methods that we use on this scale of organic farm. It was interesting to me to realize, when I started working with folks out here, that none of them had ever worked in a greenhouse before, but they've been farming their whole lives. And it was just, such an interesting thing to me that here in America, there's just like kind of the way you do it or something like that. And you sort of make these assumptions that, unless you're sort of following all of these different processes, that, you're not really going to be able to grow food efficiently or something like that. And so, I feel like they have really gotten excited about all of the different kind of tools and approaches that we use out here. And then at the same time, I've really learned so much just from being exposed to their knowledge and kind of methodology of going about growing certain crops. And actually also just sort of what qualifies as a crop has been really interesting. We had planted some herbs over in this one section and we were weeding them. And I noticed the next day that they had skipped over, this small plant that I would have weeded. I was like, oh, that's a weed or whatever, but they let it grow. And it turns out that it was lamb's quarters, which is a plant that grows naturally here in Texas, is really, like a very healthful green that a lot of people like. And that apparently has a pretty high market value as well, so it's just been interesting kind of seeing their approach to what you can benefit from the land without necessarily having to be cultivating and putting specific species in and those sorts of things. So it's just been really, really fun for me to kind of interact with that, as well as, teach them about kind of production farming and field planning and all of those sorts of things as well.
Love that example, Matt. I'm recalling my days farming in California and being taught by, there was a Latino farmer that taught me, don't weed that purslane. That's Lagos Verdes. That's a really incredibly, healthy, omega-3 rich, super. And it's just all these weeds that are so typically like weeded out of gardens or farms that are super, super nutrient rich, full of phytochemicals and omega-3 fatty acids. And so thanks for sharing that. That's such a potent story that I imagine people who are listening and paying attention and learning from one another are able to learn a lot more about healthy foods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Are there other stories that you'd like to share about some of the folks you're working with out at the farm?
Yeah, I think, there's been such a big impact on a lot of our farmers' lives just being a part of the organization. I think one of the things that is most exciting to me to be able to offer to them is a lot of flexibility with their jobs, because a lot of our farmers have children and can't necessarily work at the farm 5 days a week, and a lot of other farms in the area, and any job for that matter, would sort of have an expectation that you would be working, a certain number of hours a week or something like that. But we're really excited to be able to offer that kind of flexibility. One woman in particular I'm thinking of, named Kavira Mandali. She's from Congo, and she has 9 children that she takes care of. And, so whenever she's able to have one of the older kids at home, she can come out to the farm. But then on other days, she's not necessarily able to make it out. But another one of our farmers, Dolly, she's actually Wandaka's mom, who Meg was talking about. she's actually started watching Mandali's children one day a week so that she can make it out to the farm. So kind of beyond just the sort of monetary income production that we provide for folks, I do think that we really form a community around helping each other and allowing everyone to kind of interact with the organization in a way that's like most beneficial for their personal situation.
I was going to jump in really quick too and share just a few of the other things that I've heard from folks is that they get the chance to get exercise and being outside in the fresh air and the sunshine. Of course, many refugees come from a really traumatic background. And so this piece of being on the farm and the fresh air and there's the wide open spaces and truly getting exercise, doing something they love is very, very restorative. And so we're really grateful for that opportunity for them. And we also we haven't done a lot of this yet, but I'm super interested in that, just the medicinal aspects of many of the plants that we're growing. So we grow for a company called Texas Roselle. In partnership with her, we grow a lot of Roselle hibiscus tea. And so many of the folks have shared that the tea really helps reduce their high blood pressure. And so that's been really beneficial. And then many of our Burmese team members really like to eat the leaves when they're very young. And that's a very big part of their culinary tradition. Just so many, and Matt mentioned the lamb's quarters. There's just so many different plants that have these different medicinal properties. So many folks I've heard produce those into teas, not just the Roselle hibiscus, but just lots of other plants. When I was with Wandaka and his mother one time, they were making basil tea and talking about how just, boiling down basil leaves are really helpful as well. So there's just so much knowledge amongst our team, and I look forward to continuing to uncover that and being able to document that more and more. So it's just a beautiful exchange of knowledge, I feel like.
Beautifully said. Very exciting. And I can imagine we talk about in our MBA course, actually, how could we reimagine tea? And you're living it. You're really just what you shared makes me think that your whole team has such a more expanded notion of what tea can look like, from all the medicinal properties and all the different sorts of teas. Yeah, I'm curious if there's anything else you'd like to share either around like some of the challenges or that you've encountered, or some of the things that you're wanting to deepen into, or more learning, or even some technical skills that you're trying to weave in and cultivate more at the farm or in Open Arms.
As far as like sort of our approach to imparting technical skills and that sort of thing, we do have a certificate program that we have like 6 different modules, and so it kind of goes all the way from starting things in the greenhouse to planting them into the field to the tools we use for weeding and pest control and those sorts of things, all the way up to processing it and packing the CSA shares. And then, and then the final module is kind of about field planning and like, year-round growing, because we're year-round here in Texas. So it kind of never ends, it's sort of like every week is a consideration of what's going to happen 6 weeks from now, so really trying to impart that perspective on our farmers. And so we're actually coming up on the final module. So we have 4 farmers who kind of form our core team, and then we have some other seasonal folks who we're actually going to be bringing on more in a part-time capacity this upcoming year as well. But by mid-January, all of our core people will have their certificate, because they'll have gone through kind of this whole process. And that's something that we really want to expand upon and kind of solidify as we move toward getting the traditional provisions program up and running. We hope that everyone who comes out to the farm and is growing stuff here has access to that knowledge, that we can, help them grow the things they want to grow as best as they can out here. And yeah, I think that going forward, I think that's a part of the programming out here that's really gonna shine.
Awesome. Well, We do need to start wrapping up. I'm sure we could talk for so many more hours. We always ask our interviewees this: how can the listeners support you and help you grow this work? Are you a nonprofit, or is it possible for folks to donate to you? Is it possible for folks to purchase some of the products that Open Arms Studio and how do they follow you and learn? Tell our listeners how they can stay involved and learn from what you're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. Yes. So we are a nonprofit. The two social enterprises are underneath our nonprofit umbrella. And so the Multicultural Refugee Coalition can be found at www.mrcaustin.org. And then it links out to more information about New Leaf and Open Arms from there. We do have a shop page on there where you can buy some of the hibiscus tea. Actually, we have a commercial dehydrator that we've dehydrated that. So it's certified organic, and you can purchase that online, as well as some of our seed to stitch line of Texas organic cotton tote bags and other items. Our artisan items will be listed there soon this coming year as well. But the ways that folks can help beyond purchasing products and learning more about us and just sharing about us is that, our model is about a 50, at New Leaf anyways, it's a 50% earned income and 50% philanthropy model. At Open Arms, it's a little higher. It's about 80% earned income and 20% philanthropy. And so we are still looking for philanthropic support. And so anybody who's interested in ethical fashion or regenerative agriculture, we are looking to actually expand our network and meet up with folks in other areas besides our own here in Austin. So I'm always ready for a Zoom coffee, or I'm heading out to SoCap again in San Francisco in October. Happy to set up some coffees in person, but really looking to expand our network for sure. But please come check us out. Again, mrcaustin.org and New Leaf and Open Arms linked out from there.
Thanks for that. Well, I'll definitely have to get myself some of the hibiscus tea. And Matt, do you have anything else to add about how we can support you right now?
I don't think so. I think Meg kind of touched on the major areas that we're working on and how to get in touch with us. I will say, if you go to mrcaustin.org, you can find our social media links on there. And our assistant farm manager, Emily, does a lot of Facebook posts and Instagram posts and things like that. So if you want to see what we have going on out here, there's plenty of opportunity to do that out on social media.
Well, sending so much gratitude and warmth to your entire team. I know that they weren't able to be here with us on this call, but I really appreciate you bringing them in through their stories. And we will definitely link to some of the articles that feature them and their stories in the show notes. And just thank you so much for creating such an inspiring model that, I feel like there should be a multicultural refugee coalition in every major city in this country, because it's so needed. And the way you're really cultivating it as like a cross knowledge sharing program, it is really inspiring to us here at Lift Economy. So thank you.
And thank you, Erin. I'm delighted to just continue our community with one another. Really appreciated going through the Next Economy MBA in 2018. I was just looking back to see what year that was. Just such a inspirational time for me to learn about some different ways of operating, and certainly has been influenced directly the kind of work that we're doing today. So thank you. Thank you all for all of your work as well. And I'm just grateful to be in community with you.
Well, that's it, folks. We're growing the Next Economy and community. And thank you once again to Matt and Meg for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.